morning, and you're very welcome this morning on this crisp morning where it might be more attractive to be joining us than to be outside in the weather. You're very welcome to the Signpost webinar, which is brought to you in association with Dairy Sustainability Ireland, Food Drink Ireland SkillNet and National Rural Network. This morning I'm being joined by Alan Dillon. Alan is the DairyBeef 500 campaign manager with Teagasc, and Alan will be helping me with the questions. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. Morning, Pat.
And we're delighted to be joined by Maeve Henchion. Maeve is the head of department at the Agri-Food Business and Spatial Analysis Department based in Ashtown in Dublin. Maeve, you're very welcome.
Morning, Pat.
You're going to be talking to us about the BovINE project. Would you give us just an idea of the scope and I suppose the purpose of that project before we get going?
Yes, well, BovINE, and I'll say a little bit more about it during the actual presentation, but it was a 3-year project that was funded by the European Commission, basically to help us to come up with solutions to the sustainability challenges that are faced by beef farmers across Europe. So there were 18 partners across Europe funded for 3 years to the tune of 2 million to deliver on that. So the project is just finished. It's just finished there at the end of December. But we have a lot of resources, I suppose, that are available and will continue to be available for the next 5 years through our website and Knowledge Hub. And there are kind of key contacts there that are available as well. So I suppose that's the purpose of today's webinar, really, is just to flag these resources that are available and to, I suppose, make sure that they're available, because I suppose really what I'm trying to do is sell something that's free. And I suppose cynical people out there might say, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But actually, you know, that is my job as a researcher. I want the work that we've done to be used. And I suppose that's why I'm here today.
Okay. If you would share your screen, then we'll begin the presentation. I'll remind people that to use the question and answer to put questions to you about the presentation and about the work that you're doing.
So I'm just sorry, that's just coming up as a blank one there now. Sorry, I'm just going to come out of that. Sorry, 1 second.
Okay.
Just go back in there. Okay. So is that okay at your end?
Yeah, we're seeing it in presentation mode. Okay.
Perfect, great. Okay, so I suppose what I'm going to talk about today briefly is I'm going to explain a little bit more about what BovINE is. And then I'm going to explain what sustainability means to European beef farmers as identified by themselves. And then I'm going to talk about how bovine resources can be used by farmers, advisors, lecturers, or anybody else indeed, kind of who's involved in the beef sector in Ireland and Europe to address the sustainability challenges. So I suppose the overall context to the project initially was that, you know, the beef sector is an important sector. We know it's important in Ireland, but, you know, this was a European funded project. So it is important from a European perspective as well. There's a lot of specialised beef farmers, there's a lot of cattle, there's a lot of kind of industry involved in slaughtering it and producing beef. And obviously in terms of kind of hard cash, it contributes quite a significant amount to agricultural output, but also just generally in terms of a significant 30 billion euro sector. But the sector is facing challenges, which many of you are well aware of. It's low profitability. Many farmers who are involved in the sector are reliant on income supports through the Common Agricultural Policy. It's associated with greenhouse gas emissions, challenges with regard to water quality, and societal concerns with regards to animal welfare. But also, as all of you probably very well know as well, you know, that's only one part of the picture. We know that livestock are an important part of a sustainable food system, and that the beef sector has a role in terms of food security, in terms of human health. It's very important in terms of regional development, and it's increasingly recognised for its importance in terms of circularity and the link between crop and animal production to ensure circularity. Contributes to ecosystem services, and the EU beef sector, and particularly the Irish pasture-based beef production system, is recognised as the most carbon efficient globally. But, you know, in the background, we have policymakers, researchers, scientists, industry, civil society saying beef farming must become more sustainable. But we also know that farmers are very willing and able to engage, but I suppose they're not quite sure what does that mean for them. You know, what does it mean to become more sustainable? What changes do they need to make on farm? And I suppose, you know, more broadly, what supports and policies are required to help them in that regard. So that's really where BovINE came from. It said, you know, let's look at this a slightly different way. And let's ask farmers, what do they need? Let's not get, you know, bogged down in what does sustainability mean, but, you know, farmers know very well themselves what's needed to have a viable sector into the future. So we started by asking farmers, what do they need? And then we said, we will go and look for those solutions for you. So we got funded for this project, which had started in January 2020. And we were lucky we were able to have an in-person kick-off meeting, which we held here in Ashtown and in our research centre in Grange. And it involved 18 partners across nine countries, and we got the €2 million for 3 years. But if you look at the countries that are represented there, Ireland, Belgium, Germany, France, Estonia, Spain, Portugal, Poland, and Italy, you know, you'll have an appreciation that obviously we had diverse production systems involved in terms of representation within the consortium. We had countries for whom beef was very important, and then we had other countries where I suppose the beef sector was smaller and I suppose more emerging. For example, Estonia has quite a small beef herd, but it's quite a rapidly growing herd there. And I suppose the approach we took was to take a very much a holistic view of farming systems and the socioeconomic environment, but it's very much, so we looked at, you know, the economic, social and environmental aspects of sustainability, but we were very much focused on having innovative and practical solutions at farm scale. This was not designed to be a research project. It was designed to gather knowledge and innovations and solutions, but it wasn't undertaking research per se itself. So it was very much focused on bringing solutions into practice on farms. It took a multi-actor approach, but, you know, involving vets, farmers, advisors, input suppliers, and anybody else that you could think of there. But I suppose that the main point is we focused on farmers. They were at the center of what we were doing, and we wanted to make sure that we were asking farmers for their needs. And I suppose just to, you know, use some of the jargon that's involved in EU projects, we were very focused on grassroots needs. So we wanted to identify those, and once we identified the grassroots needs, the project then was supposed to come around and to develop solutions to them. So how did we go about this? Well, we talked to farmers across the member states, and I suppose, you know, when you ask them what are their needs, that's a very broad question. So we put that within the context of 4 thematic areas, which broadly map onto economic, social and environmental sustainability. So we had socioeconomic resilience, which obviously covers off on the economic bit, with environmental sustainability, which covers off on the environment on the environmental bit, and then we had animal health and welfare, which obviously covers off on the social bit as well, and with production efficiency and meat quality. So those 4 themes, as you see, would map onto economic, social and environmental aspects of sustainability. And we had a quite a systematic process to identify these grassroots needs. We appointed what we called network managers across each of the 9 member states. And these are people who would be interacting with farmers on a day-to-day basis and would have an understanding of the needs of farmers. But we also had regional and national meetings. And many of you might remember some of these meetings that we held in Ireland with our partners, the IFA, they were our partners in Ireland on that. So we had a number of meetings where we invited farmers to talk to us about their needs. And then once we identified those needs, we tried to, I suppose, refine them. And then we had to prioritize those. And we did that in a very structured way. And as I said, when we kind of were making those surveys and the voting, we want to make sure that we had various perspectives involved in that. So when we brought it to what we call our General Assembly, which is all the partners, we had, you know, the farming representative bodies, we had the advisors, we had the researchers, they were all involved in making that prioritization. So each year then we had what we call 8 priority topics, and there were 2 for each of the 4 areas that I spoke about. So I suppose it's just to, I suppose, explain how we collected the needs and how we organized those according to each of the thematic areas. And look, we spent a lot of time asking farmers about what they wanted. So in total, in 2020, we identified what we call 96 grassroots needs. We identified 87 in 2021, And I suppose it was less of a focus for us in 2022 because we knew we wouldn't be able to respond to those needs in 2023. So I suppose we kind of didn't put as much effort into it in 2022. But I think there's a very valuable resource there, and we've captured all of those in what we call a grassroots needs register, and they're available on the BovINE website. So just to explain why we think that might be useful, all of those grassroots needs have been identified by farmers as required to address the sustainability challenges that they face. And I think if we can look at those needs, and respond to those, we can stimulate the adoption and long-term durability of effective solutions. And I suppose we can think about how can we find common solutions and how can we facilitate collective learning across Europe. And I think it should be able to stimulate ideas for other projects as well. So if we look at those needs, these are needs that have been identified by farmers, and if we can develop a project to address those and has the evidence that these are challenges identified by farmers, it should enhance the probability of success of those projects. So that's just one of the outputs that we produced within BovINE that we think should be useful. But obviously, identifying needs is only, that'll only bring you so far. You have to do something about it. So that's what we did in BovINE, is we responded to those needs. So I'm going to bring us through, I suppose, two sets of those responses in a moment. So just, I suppose, to explain a little bit again, I just want to show you here, these are our 4 thematic areas. Each year we identified two grassroots needs, and we did that each year. So there were 24 grassroots needs, our priority topics, responded to in total. And you'll see some of those there that, would be of relevance to all of you, I'm sure, on the socioeconomic resilience. We're talking about tools and strategies to manage price volatility and cash flow. And in terms of, say, production efficiency and meat quality, we're looking at animal monitoring tools in the fattening phase. So they were the ones. But I'm going to bring you through the grassroots needs in relation to animal health and welfare and environmental sustainability shortly, just, I suppose, to illustrate how the BovINE resources can be of use to you in trying to identify those priority topics, which, as I say, were identified by farmers. So the approach we take when we're trying to identify a solution is we took a dual approach. So we spoke to farmers, as we said, and they said they have a problem with whatever it was. And then we took 2 approaches in terms of trying to identify solutions to those. So if you look along the top, we identified what are called good practices. And these are solutions that were put into place on farms across Europe. And how we identified those was through our network managers. And there was one network manager appointed for each country across Europe. So they went out, they spoke to their farmers, they said, how do you deal with this problem? And that's how we came up with what we call good practices. Along the bottom, then you'll see what are called research innovations. And these are, they were identified by what we call thematic working groups. So across each of the 4 thematic areas, we had an expert who established a team to identify solutions from research. And these are, I suppose, solutions that hadn't yet been put into practice on farm, but were identified as something that would have potential to be implemented in the short to medium term. So we had two routes to finding solutions to the problems that were identified by farmers. So as I said, the idea was that we had solutions from our network managers across Europe who were very much in contact with farmers on a day-to-day basis. And then each of those there were particular responsibility. There was a particular individual assigned responsibility for that. And you can see Kevin Kinsler there in the middle. He was our Irish network manager. Then overlaid across that, we had the solutions that were coming from the thematic working group leaders. So very much trying to blend different sources of knowledge together to come up with the solutions to the farmers' needs. So as I said, I'll talk you through 2 of the thematic areas, just, I suppose, to give you a flavour of the resources that are available and how they might be used. And the slides here are from Alexander Rieck from FLI in Germany, because he was the person who was responsible for this particular thematic working group. So across the 3 years, these are the 8 priority topics that were identified for BovINE to work on as a result of talking to farmers. So I'm going to particularly focus in just on 2 of those, just to give you a sense of the resources that are available. So I'm going to talk about determining cause of lameness in beef cattle, and talk about simple labour-saving tools to measure and communicate high animal welfare standards on beef farms. So if we start with determining the causes of lameness in beef cattle, one of the solutions we came up with was infrared thermography for diagnosing lameness. As many of you know, lameness is a problem that affects productivity and profitability of beef cattle farming. And we know that if an animal is lame, they will have a warmer foot. And that indeed, if you can identify that beforehand, it can help to rectify the problem fairly quickly. And that heat can be detected using infrared thermography. And one of the benefits of that is that it's non-invasive. It doesn't involve any pain or anything for the animal. And as I said, it can even be used to detect subclinical signs, and the problem can be addressed sooner rather than later. So it has been used in dairy cattle, but its use in beef cattle hasn't really been that prevalent. So what we did was we got the technology, and we, I suppose, used it, 2 different cameras, and compared how they worked. So this was particularly done in Germany. And what they found was that the infrared was useful to diagnose lameness early and to clarify any suspicions. They did identify, I suppose, a challenge in practice is that the camera does need to be quite a short distance from the animal, and they identified some useful conditions under which to get optimal use of the camera. So using an animal on a flat floor, not on straw, being at most 2 meters from the animal. It might be necessary to tether the animal, and it's often useful to have another leg as a comparison, to be able to see is there something different about the leg that you're looking at. So that they were what they came up with kind of there. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, you can scan the QR code there, but also I would recommend that you look at the BovINE Knowledge Hub. And what we have there is an article, just a kind of a text-based article with various images and links back to literature, for those of you who want more scientific explanation and evidence around that. But there also, we have 2 demonstrations of how the camera was used in 2 different countries, and videos and pictures there. And I'm sure you're all very well aware that farmers and advisors, they like audiovisual material, and that was a particular brief of the project, that we wouldn't just be producing fact sheets, which are very useful in their own right, but because we wanted to, I suppose, demonstrate the application in practice, and the challenges and the ways of doing that, we were very keen to have videos and pictures. So there's a lot of resources available on the Knowledge Hub. So moving on to another topic under the animal health and welfare, the simple labour-saving tools to measure and communicate high animal welfare standards on beef farms. We took the particular example of bovine respiratory disease and looking at on-farm scoring, an on-farm scoring system for that. And I suppose this is particularly relevant for feedlot cattle more so than animals that are at pasture. But it's just, I suppose, again, this is just for illustrative purposes. So we know that BRD obviously has a negative impact on daily gain and carcass weight, but what this solution is, it's about a scoring system that's very practical and simple, built into an app that can help to identify whether BRD is prevalent or not, and therefore I suppose to put management resources and interventions in place to address that. So we identified that a BRD scoring system had already been developed at UC Davis in the United States, and it's a very simple system based on 6 clinical signs, and there is a score given to the animal based on those 6 clinical signs. And as you can see on the right hand side, they're very, very simple: no cough or a spontaneous cough, and there's very explicit photographs there that can help to identify whether we know the animal is positive or negative, or gets a score of 1 or 4 or whatever. So it's a very simple system. So that was then built into an app and this app is available and is being used. And the farmer can just say whether there is nasal discharge or eye discharge, and then at the end of the day they know whether there is a BRD score, positive or negative. And obviously if there's a negative score they're happy, and if there's a positive score they know that they need to take some action. But it's a very simple tool. And again, just for those of you who are interested in knowing a little bit more, we have an article linked back to the literature and the scientific evidence around the science behind the innovation. And then there have been 2 demonstrations, one in Germany and one in Spain, where there's a lot of videos and pictures and fact sheets that are useful. And look, these are things that could be used in discussion groups or just to promote discussion as much as anything else. And again, I suppose just to highlight that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes in relation to these innovations. So here, there was a lot of work done looking at not just academic research, but also at what we call the grey literature. So that would be reports done by various agencies and organisations that haven't been published in academic literature, but are available elsewhere. So there was a lot of work done to identify those, and the evidence is available within a database. So if you're particularly interested in animal health and welfare, I'd suggest that you have a look at this link here, and you can go straight to the 37 minutes and 47 seconds to get more information from the expert in animal health and welfare from Alexander Reek. And just this is another one that was actually mentioned at our review meeting yesterday, and somebody said, oh, that might be of interest to the Irish farmers. This was a solution to improve water quality. And if you just go onto our Bovine Knowledge Hub, you can find that very clearly, and you can see the photographs and the images there. And this is just something I want to highlight here. This is a demo. So this is where we actually got one of the solutions that are coming from the research side, and that were put into practice on farm. So they have been brought, I suppose, further along. So if you see demo, it means that it's a research innovation that has been put into practice. And that obviously, I suppose, would enhance potential uptake, because it has been put into practice, and obviously would be more useful. So we're shifting gear here now. We're looking at environmental sustainability and looking at what we did around that. And this presentation is structured a little bit differently to the animal health and welfare, because if you can use the resources of BovINE, I suppose, to bring a holistic solution together. So if we look at the environmental sustainability, I suppose one of the first things we can do is try to figure out how do we measure it. And in BovINE, we have documented quite a number of tools that can be used to measure it. Some of those are suitable at kind of across a whole heap of countries and regions, and some are more specific to individual countries and regions. And obviously, the more specific they are, the more accurate that they're likely to be. But there are trade-offs and all of that. So we've kind of profiled a number of them in BovINE. And this one here, Cap2Zer, where you see the flags there, that means that has actually been demonstrated in practice in the countries that are represented by those flags. So that was quite a popular tool for taking and demonstrating. But then I suppose, once we've measured it, the next thing is to try and see about how can we decrease the carbon footprint. And look, some of you are aware of a lot of these already, but what we did was we put a list of them together. And as you see here, these are the research innovations. These are the ones that are coming from research as opposed to having been put into practice on farms yet. But these were demonstrated in the various countries that are members of the BovINE consortium. So we have more insights into how they could actually work and practice in different countries. And these ones here, the good practices, they have all been put into practice on farm already. So we know that farmers have confidence in them and that they work in them. So I'm not going to go through the details of them here, but I think it's just to show that we do have a range of solutions brought together in one place that can help to reduce enteric emissions on farm. And just to go through some of the examples that are there, obviously we know feed management is one of the key solutions, and we have looked at linseed, and the other one there in the middle is actually a local one that was done in Belgium, and it uses rapeseed and brewer's grains in terms of feeding animals. And then the seaweed is one that some of you will be familiar with as a result of ongoing work within Teagasc as well. So there's a number of areas that we're looking at there. And then there's the various additives, the nitrates and those as well. And the Bovaer, that's one that has already been improved in dairy, but hasn't yet been approved in beef as far as I know. So we've just, documented those and I suppose reported those, and they're available there as solutions. So then if you move beyond the carbon reduction or the emissions reductions, we're looking at carbon sequestration. Again, we have a list of research innovations and good practices there, and some of those have been demonstrated in practice. So if you're particularly looking for solutions around carbon sequestration, you have a set of them already identified there with videos. And so, again, as I said, they could be useful for farmers in discussion groups. You can talk about solutions that have been implemented elsewhere. How might they be adapted? How might they be suitable for Ireland? Would they even be suitable for Ireland? So I think there's just very useful resources there. And sorry, just trying to get 1 second. Okay. And then obviously in terms of, we're not just interested in emissions, we're also interested in biodiversity. We have a whole heap of research innovations and good practices there, ranging from using drones to map meadow birds to beetle banks. And you'll see there's a whole heap of different solutions that have been put into place in different countries. And they're documented in a very practical way to help with being implemented into practice. And these are just some nice images associated with those. I think the dung beetle, that's an example from Portugal, and we know that dung beetles can help reduce methane emissions and also improve soil fertility. The net boxes for bats is a nice example there. Farming with barn owls, that's something I think we've had some discussions in Ireland on already, in the flower zones, and those we're well familiar with. But I think the idea is that we have a list of small changes which, if implemented, can improve biodiversity on farms over time. Another area in terms of environmental sustainability, obviously, is water quality and reducing nutrient leaching. We have, again, a number of solutions there, and they have been put into practice in different countries as well. So there's a range of possible solutions there. I'm not saying we have all the solutions. These are just ones that were collected through the BovINE project and could, I suppose, form the basis of a starting point or discussions for on the topic. This was a nice kind of example here from Greece, I think. So obviously, maize is a feed that is used in some countries to feed animals, and there was a problem with cover crops. I know we don't grow a lot of maize here, but I mean, I think the point that has been made here is kind of useful for us to be thinking about, and it's an inspiration for thinking about other solutions. So the problem with is if you're harvesting maize late, you can't really get your cover crops in. So what they did here was they sowed the cover crops at the same time as the maize. They sowed it simultaneously or later on, and this is just some of the results that they found. So they found that it was quite a good way of doing that. So if we've gone through the various measures with regards to improving environmental sustainability, maybe we need to be looking at incentivizing these various practices. And we had a look at a whole range of measures that are in place for rewarding farmers. And they're all documented on the BovINE Knowledge Hub as well. But Riet, who was responsible for this particular area, she developed a very nice graphic that illustrates the various mechanisms that could be put in place to help farmers meet their environmental standards. It looked at ones at European level, and then ones that are more kind of adapted to local conditions, and I suppose suggested maybe there could be more local supports for those. And then there are, the potential for private investors also to be involved in the reward system. So I think even just that conceptually, that conceptual way of looking at the reward systems is very useful. And we have different examples of those on the Knowledge Hub as well that I suppose can be useful in terms of thinking about what other alternatives and what other ways can we think about rewarding farmers for meeting environmental requirements. So it's getting towards the end of the presentation now. It's just about, talking about where you can find this information. So all the information on the priority topics, the good practices and the research innovations is available on the BovINE Knowledge Hub. And that's hub.bovine.eu.net. And look, just, it's a very user-friendly, well, reasonably user-friendly resource. It's open access to all. There's a search facility there, and it's organized really around those 4 themes. We actually have some multilingual material available for others as well. But I suppose, the point I want to make too is that, this is a resource that is being used. The number of users to date is about 3,500, and the number of page views that they have is 6.3 pages. But I suppose what's really particularly interesting is that they spend actually nearly 6 minutes on the site on average, which is very long really. So I think, it is a resource that is being used, and I would encourage all of you to make sure to use it as well. We have a website as well as the hub, and you can access the hub through the website. But we have on that as well, we have webinars across the various thematic areas. We have animations as well across the thematic areas, and we have a lot of videos that are available to be used as well, and they're hosted on our YouTube site. So just, I suppose, to highlight the number of videos that we have, we have 20 videos at least in relation just to animal health and welfare topic alone. And so I think it's just, to highlight there's a lot of useful audiovisual material there. So look, I think this resource, hopefully, certainly is of use to farmers and advisors, and hopefully is of use to a lot of others as well. There's a catalogue of abstracts which documents all the research innovations and good practices. So you can look through that, as well as looking through according to the priority topics or the search terms. And look, you're welcome very much as well to contact the network managers that are identified, or the thematic working group leaders, for further information on the materials that are available as well. And you can click there to enter the hub through the website. And I suppose just when Mark Moore, he's the editor of Today's Farm, when he put an article helped us put an article together in Today's Farm recently, and when he was looking through the hub, he said, I felt like a nerd. He said he had great fun just looking through it, seeing what was available. So I would just encourage all of you to be the bovine nerd. Just go and have a look on the hub, see if there's something of use to you, and just see what are the issues that are affecting farmers across Europe, what are the solutions that they're putting in place, and hopefully it'll be something that hopefully that'll be something that you'll be able to take away to help to improve the sustainability of the beef sector in Europe. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank those who provided slides for this presentation: Alexander Reek from FLI, Reid Desmit and Karen Goosens from ILVO, Rhonda Smith from Minerva, and Maite Quiller from Intia. And then I just want to acknowledge Richard Lynch, who was the bovine project manager. Many of you might know him from his time spent in Grange, and he's actually continuing work with Teagasc now on a very different area, working on the Valpro Path project. I want to thank Kevin Kinsella, who is the Irish network manager, facilitating a lot of the work that we did here in Ireland as part of the EU project, and all members of the Bovine Consortium, members of our technical working groups, and many of you in Ireland who would have participated in our events over the last 3 years as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, fascinating. It's an example, I suppose, of the type of project that the EU are trying to I suppose, innovate in where they're bringing farmers, they're bringing multi-actors to bear on, I suppose, some of the big issues. How easy was it to bring all those actors together? And I suppose a lot of it was done during COVID time, I suspect, as well. So there probably wasn't too many face-to-faces.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is, we want to have a multi-actor approach, but I suppose the main thing you have to do is start off at the start by very much ensuring that you have farmers involved from the start. And we actually, before we even put the proposal together, we talked to farmers here in Ireland. We had a workshop here in Ashdown and involved farmers, advisors, people from Animal Health Ireland, various other stakeholders as well, to help to see, is this something that we should do? And kind of, if we were going to do it, kind of how should we organize it and structure it? So we did that from the outset. So and then I suppose one of the key things that we did was we appointed a network manager across each country, and they were people who took responsibility for engaging with farmers, and they were people for whom engaging with farmers was the day job. So there's no point in just appointing somebody to that role. It has to be somebody who's engaging with them on a day-to-day basis. And I suppose, COVID it brought opportunities as well as, I suppose, limited our activities. In one sense, it meant that we couldn't go out and meet a lot of farmers, but then obviously, more than the Signpost series, we had online events, and that worked very well. I mean, we had 3 national meetings here in Ireland, and I think we had over 100 farmers at each of those meetings, and they were able to join in kind of in the evening at 8 o'clock or whatever. But if we had that in an individual location, I would say if we had 30 or 40 farmers, we'd have been doing very well. So I suppose, technology has facilitated that engagement, but obviously the quality of the engagement is different, but it certainly was useful in some contexts. And I suppose in an international context as well, it was very useful because Zoom actually has a functionality that you can have simultaneous translation. And our last event that we had in Brussels, we had simultaneous translation in the 9 different languages. So we were able to have farmers from all across Europe involved as well. So COVID did give us some nice kind of benefits as well.
Just to remind people to submit your questions using the questions and answers. It strikes me that we often talk about getting stakeholders involved in, I suppose, directing and guiding our research topics. This looks like a very structured approach to finding out what those real research needs were. And I suppose, has there been any outcome of that in consultation with researchers to identify what key issues need to be resolved?
Well, yeah, we produced a peer-reviewed publication, I suppose, based on it. I suppose that answers your question fairly much, I suppose. But I suppose the key, what we were trying to do was trying to blend, I think, the different sources of knowledge. And if you remember, we were talking about, the good practices, which are coming from farmers, and that's a particular type of knowledge. And then we were trying to blend that with the scientific knowledge that was coming from the scientific community. So I think we had to structure it then so that we had a systematic process whereby we gathered those 2 sources of knowledge. But the key thing then was trying to blend the 2 sources of knowledge together as well. So we would have had that was kind of how we did in the BovINE project. Then we had various meetings whereby we engaged with each other in workshops and trying to bring all of that together. So like it does sound simple in practice, but you do have to be quite structured. And even if you remember those slides where I was talking about the grassroots needs, it sounds very simple that you go out and ask farmers what they want, but you have to go out and ask them what they want within certain parameters, and then you have to, I suppose, reframe those into something that is a researchable question, if you like, so there's quite a lot of work to be done to even get to those grassroots needs. So there is a systematic process, and there's a constant reflection as well in terms of trying to make the process more efficient, because we started off with a bells and whistles approach, but then we realized really, we have to simplify it. So, there's constant kind of reflection as well to improve the process.
And I suppose a lot of the solutions or a lot of the issues revolve around policy. Are there implications for policy in the work that you have done?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think a lot of if you think back to the priority topics that we were talking about, like they very much resonate with the themes of the Green Deal. The fair distribution of price and things like that. That was one of the thematic areas that we addressed within the socioeconomic resilience. And I think a lot of for example, if we think about the solutions in relation to the environmental sustainability, some of those could very much be pulled out and brought into to be paid within the cap. So we know that one of the examples, it was one of the people in Portugal came to one of our meetings in Spain, and as a result of that, and one of the solutions that they found to environmental sustainability, that's now included as a measure for which farmers are getting paid in Portugal. So I think there are, if people want to look through the solutions and pull out some of those and propose them as measures for which they could be rewarded, that's one way that it can have a policy impact.
Alan, some questions starting to come in there.
Yeah, I suppose one in here is how do you actually get on the hub? Is there a website with videos on it, etc., that people can access easily?
Well, it's www.bovine-eu.net. And you can get, that's our website, and you can get onto what's called the BovINE Knowledge Hub through that. That's where most of the content is, and all of the videos are hosted on there, and they're hosted on our YouTube website. So that's, if you get onto the website, you can get from there onto the hub, and you can access the various videos and animations and all of that through that as well.
There's another one in here. Was there any prioritization of the solutions done as part of the project, or is the process left to the individual farmer and their advisor, for example, to decide?
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're just proposing the solutions. And remember, these are solutions that were identified from across Europe, reflecting all the different production systems as well. So they may not be suitable for Ireland. But I suppose that's not necessarily the point either. You know, I think it could be very useful to look at some of the solutions that are put in place for, say, various intensive fattening systems, and try to see, you know, why do they suit those systems and why do they not suit our systems, and is there something that we can even take from them, even if it's in a different production system context. So I don't think any of these solutions are meant to be taken and implemented as they are. They absolutely should be thought about in the context of your own farm and in discussion with the advisor. And you might have noticed that we talk about good practices as opposed to best practices, because what's best in one context isn't best in another context. So I would think absolutely, you know, it's up to the farmer to decide what their needs are, to think about what the solutions might be, and to in consultation with your advisor or others to determine, is that solution appropriate for your context?
Okay. Another question there. Has there been any assessment of the efficacy of the solutions being proposed? And can users find out which solutions achieve the best outcome for their own individual problem?
Yeah, no, well, we didn't actually do an impact assessment on any of the solutions. However, some of the solutions would be linked back to scientific evidence that would talk about the solution. So we were just coming up with, you know, what is a potential solution, but we didn't evaluate them. But some work may have been done, particularly for the research innovations, to evaluate them. So if you go into the solution and click through to the various links that are associated with those, you will get some more information. Now, that information may not be available in all cases, but there should be some background material that's associated with the solutions that can give further evidence of them. But absolutely, we're not saying that these are the best solutions, and we're not saying that those solutions will result in the greatest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. That wasn't the purpose of this project, and we'd have needed another 20 or 30 minutes, I would say, to have done that.
Okay.
Okay, I suppose one of the things that strikes me is the prominence that animal health and welfare got in the project, and I suppose it reflects a growing realization of that as a key issue. Were farmers, I suppose, at the forefront of the issues there, or is it something that they're coming to the table with, or is it something that there was a high level of realization of as an issue?
Well, I suppose that this presentation did highlight the animal health and welfare ones, but I think our focus was across the 4 thematic areas. And I suppose when you think about it as well, the animal health and welfare ones were ones that were easy to, it was relatively easy to find solutions to them, because there were very specific problems. So I suppose they lent themselves quite well to solutions and demonstrations and the creation of videos. Some of you might remember and some of the national meetings, we talked about the dummy calf and the Madigan squeeze. That was one that was very popular, and it was just a nice kind of idea. It was the idea is that you know, an animal, when they're born, sometimes they can be quite lethargic, and there was an innovation. Racing animals, that you tie them up and restrict their breathing using a rope, and then they go into kind of a sleep, and you release the rope after a number of, I think it's 10 or 15 minutes, and then the calf jumps up miraculously and it's fine. But this had been put into practice on a racehorse, and then there was a vet who was part of the project, did that for calves as well, and we had videos around that. But because it was such a nice, neat kind of solution, it was one that kind of, I suppose, that took legs. So I suppose I wouldn't like to say that animal health and welfare is the focus of BovINE. It's one of the 4 topics, and I suppose just to be mindful of the nature of the nature of the challenges and the nature of the solutions, and how they might lend themselves to to, I suppose, the creation of audiovisual material, because the socioeconomic resilience one, for example, where one of the ones was around trying to improve the image of beef. You know, that's a much more complex problem. And I suppose in terms of trying to find solutions, you know, you don't have videos and audiovisual materials around that, but we did have a number of solutions kind of that are put in there as well. But farmers definitely are very conscious of animal health and welfare, and we had an excellent partner from FLI in Germany. If anyone is interested in that topic, you know, an excellent partner there, and their institution is all about animal health and welfare, was specialised in that area, and so we were very fortunate to have excellent partners and very specialised in that area there.
And I presume it's in terms of advisors and advisors working with their clients. There's materials in there and I suppose implications for advisors in terms of the use of that material.
Yeah, and just one of the things that we did as well, which isn't highlighted here, is that we looked at the solutions and looked at how they impacted on other areas. So, for example, we know kind of the ones that gets thrown out is, you know, if you're improving environmental sustainability, you're going to disimprove your economic sustainability. You know, that's kind of a perception that's out there. But what we did was we tried to map the solutions across the 4 thematic areas to see if they had a synergistic effect or not. And one of the things that we found was, you know, there are quite a number of synergies across areas. So if we do something in one area, it can have a positive impact in another aspect of sustainability. And what that brought home to us was, I suppose, the need to think about advisory from going back to the old kind of farm systems perspective. We, you know, we obviously have specialist advisors, and we do need those specialist advisors, but maybe we need to think about our system, you know, think about the farm system a little bit more. And instead of coming along with a solution for a particular problem, we think about that solution in the context of other impacts on the farm as well. So maybe there's a need for, and this was a recommendation that came from our colleagues in ILVO in the Netherlands, maybe there's a need to have advisors that are more focused on the farm system as opposed to being specialists in particular areas. And that, you know, and to be thinking about these issues a bit more holistically into the future. So that was just one of the recommendations that came out.
Excuse me. It was an IFA Teagasc were the 2 organizations involved here. Was there a similar mix of organizations involved in the other partner countries?
Yeah, and that was part of the deliberate structure that we set up. We wanted to make sure we had what we called kind of a research institution or university combined with a farming organization or advisory body, because we wanted to have that blending of the 2 different sources of knowledge. So in each country we set up that pairing, and I think that actually worked very well. In each of these countries, they might necessarily have known each other or worked with each other. So I think that's a nice kind of legacy of BovINE now too. There are those kind of nice networks set up in each of the countries, and I think, you know, those contacts will continue into the future as well.
And I suppose the question about the future is, do you see a scope for follow-on work, or has the project identified issues that need to be tackled going forward?
Yeah, and the start of the presentation where I talked about grassroots needs, I mean, there's a lot of areas there that we didn't tackle. So I think there are a lot of opportunities there for new projects, potentially, you know, operational groups. I think if they had a look at the list of grassroots needs, it could be ideas for them to establish operational groups. And as I said, that the resources are going to be available for the next 5 years. You know, there will be new solutions into the future, but we're not going to be able to add those to the website. But if people are aware of new solutions, they can actually comment in the Knowledge Hub, and maybe just point people to some other solutions that are there maybe as well.
Alan, to put you on the spot, I know you're here to ask questions, but what you've seen, and you're working with farmers in a very innovative way on a daily basis. Do you see or something in the approach and in the resource that would be of help to you in your work?
I do, yeah, definitely. And I mean, a lot of what I suppose Maeve has been working on in terms of BovINE you know, we'd be always looking to implement those type of practices on farm. I mean, if you take a lot of what some of the focus there, they tie in well with the environmental schemes. You know, the new circular cow scheme in terms of, you know, carbon efficiency, and in terms of the new acre scheme, there's a lot of tie-ups with the two. So there's a huge, it's an easy sell to a lot of farmers, I reckon, especially in the dry stock sector.
There was a focus, I think, in one of the areas, one of the areas of focus was in relation to your breeding and your genetics. Do farmers across Europe see that as more a profitability issue, or as a sustainability issue, or a little bit of both? Or do they realize that there is a significant scope for improved sustainability arising from effective breeding?
It's probably a little bit of both, and I think they very much, you know, recognise, well, you know, those people who know kind of are interested in the area would recognise a lot of the excellent work that's come out of Ireland, and a lot of the good practices and research innovations reflect, you know, the work that Teagasc, ICBF, and others have been doing as well. So we would have, you know, obviously, in addition to trying to gather knowledge, we would have contributed knowledge based on what's going on here in Ireland. And what farmers are using there. So, you know, calf zone, what is it? Calf zone worth, is that what's the
Cow zone?
What is it called? The calf zone worth, isn't there something around that where you value the calf based on?
Sorry, the
CBV, that's it. Yeah. So we would have contributed those examples to the Knowledge Hub as well. So I think that, you know, there was a lot of what we're doing in Ireland, I think, would be recognised as being at the forefront in that space, and we would have contributed that knowledge to the hub.
And how much of a departure was it for the IFA to be involved in a project like this? I suppose it's in a research demonstration project. It's not where their I suppose their history is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that they are involved in another project that we're involved in as well, called Plutos, working with farmers down in the Dingle Peninsula. So look, yeah, it was a new departure for them, but I suppose Kevin Kinsella was synonymous with the beef sector and trying to work with them. And I suppose I'd been looking to work with him for a number of years and recognised, you know, the very good connections that he had and the environmental committee that existed within IFA as well. And we had fantastic support from them, like Brendan Golden and the other people involved in the livestock committee. They were very, very supportive, and I think it was a very useful channel to get to farmers. In addition to the Teagasc channels, I think it was very useful to engage with IFA to have that collaboration and that engagement with farmers in Ireland.
And was there opportunities for individual farmers to discuss issues with peers across Europe, or was it very much a local-based filtering of issues and ideas up to through the expert group?
Well, we had those national meetings, and that, I suppose, that was the opportunity really to link in at grassroots level with farmers. But we also, the intention was to bring farmers to the meetings, but COVID obviously kind of created difficulties with that. So we didn't really get to bring many farmers with us to the various events. But we brought Martin. My brain isn't working. Martin Merrick. No, that's what's from the Farmers Journal. I'm not. No, my brain isn't working right, sir. But we actually had a nice connection with the Farmers Journal from the outset through Adam Woods, and the idea was that we would have what we called a committed media partner in each country as well, to help to make sure we were getting the information out to farmers. So that was a very important channel for us as well.
Okay, I think we've exhausted most of the questions. Listen, thank you very much. I think the approach, and there's as much to be learned from the approach that you've taken in taking on other issues and bringing together a base of knowledge which can be there then right into the future. And I think there are potentially a lot of other issues that could do with the same sort of treatment. So listen, thank you very much, Maeve. Really appreciate it. And thanks, Alan, for the help with the questions. Just to let you know, next Friday is St. Patrick's Day, so we won't be coming to you on Friday. We'll be coming to you on Thursday morning instead. And next Thursday morning, we'll be joined by Dr. Stefan Giesen from Wageningen and Professor Andrew Neal from Rottenstead Research. And they'll be looking at the very topical issue of managing soil health. And we do have a number of events coming up in relation to soil health over the next short period in Ireland, and some legislation on the way in relation to soil health. So it's going to be a very topical issue in the coming year. So listen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I hope we don't inconvenience you next week by changing the day, and that you can join us on the Thursday morning. And with that, I'll just say thank you to our production team this morning of Mary O'Loughlin and Andy Boland. And until next week, stay safe, and we'll see you in a week's time.